I never imagined that a single notification could dismantle my entire world. But there it was, cold, impersonal, and utterly devastating. Your balance has fallen below the minimum threshold. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Banks mess up all the time, right? A glitch in the system, maybe. But something about the message set off a warning deep in my gut. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I logged in to check our son's college fund. Aiden's future. The one thing Daniel and I had agreed was untouchable. The screen loaded and my heart stopped. 0. Not low balance. Not insufficient funds. 0. I stared at it, blinking rapidly, my brain struggling to process what I was seeing. My mind immediately scrambled for an explanation. There had to be a mistake. A transfer error. Maybe I was looking at the wrong account. I refreshed the page. Still 0. I clicked into the account history. No transactions recorded. That was when the dread started crawling up my spine. I reached for my phone and dialed Daniel's number. It rang once, then went straight to voicemail. That wasn't normal. Daniel, call me back. Something's wrong with Aiden's college fund, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. I hung up, hands shaking. I tried again. Straight to voicemail. I stood up abruptly, scanning the house. The keys to his car weren't on the hook by the door. His work bag wasn't by the couch. A chill crept through my veins as I rushed to our bedroom, throwing open the closet. Half of his clothes were gone. So was his suitcase. No. I turned, practically sprinting back to the living room. Aiden was sitting on the couch, casually munching on an apple, his feet tucked under him as he focused on his tablet. He didn't even glance up. I forced my voice to stay calm. Aiden, where's your dad? He shrugged, taking another bite. He left. Left. I repeated, my throat suddenly dry. Left where? Aiden finally looked at me, completely unfazed. I dunno. He took his suitcase. I staggered back, gripping the edge of the couch for balance. No, this couldn't be happening. Daniel and I had fought before, sure. We weren't perfect. But he would never do something like this. Right? My hands trembled as I grabbed my laptop, flipping open the credit card statement. $3,200, 5 seasons resort and spa. $800, first-class flight, JFK to Miami. $1,500, Michelin star restaurant. $1,200, luxury boutique shopping. I swallowed hard, my eyes tracing the devastating pattern of betrayal in black and white. I scrolled faster, desperately searching for proof that this was all a misunderstanding. But every transaction just confirmed what I already knew. He had taken the money and run. A sound rose in my throat, part laugh, part sob. This wasn't real. This wasn't my life. The man I had built a life with, the father of my child, had wiped out our son's future and vanished. I felt sick. I gripped the table, my vision swimming. My hands curled into fists. Anger, disbelief, and grief churned inside me, twisting into something unrecognizable. Aiden watched me with that same unreadable expression, his fingers tapping against his tablet. Then, suddenly, he grinned. "Mom, it's fine," he said lightly. "I fixed everything." I froze. "What?" Aiden tilted his head slightly, his grin unwavering. "I fixed it." His voice was too casual, too calm, and for the first time that evening, I felt something far worse than heartbreak. I felt fear. For a long moment, I just stared at Aiden, the words he'd spoken hanging heavy in the air. I fixed everything. I wanted to believe he was just trying to comfort me, that his words were the innocent reassurance of an 11-year-old who didn't fully understand the gravity of the situation. But the way he said it, so casual, so assured, made my stomach tighten. I forced myself to swallow past the lump in my throat. "Aiden, what do you mean you fixed it?" He took another bite of his apple, his small teeth crunching through it like we weren't standing in the middle of a financial catastrophe. "I mean, you don't have to worry," he said simply, eyes never leaving his tablet screen. "It's all handled." "Handled?" My voice came out sharp, the rising panic creeping into my tone. "Aiden, this isn't I cut myself off, shaking my head. Just tell me exactly what you think you fixed. Aiden sighed, finally looking up at me. You're going to figure it out anyway. That sentence sent a shiver down my spine. I was too exhausted, too raw to process his cryptic words, so I forced myself to return to the immediate crisis. I turned back to my laptop, my fingers moving quickly over the keys as I scrolled through every financial account Daniel and I shared. And that was when the true extent of his betrayal hit me like a sledgehammer. It wasn't just Aiden's college fund. Daniel had been draining our savings account for months. Tens of thousands of dollars, money set aside for our future, our home, our emergencies, gone. Vanished. And he hadn't stopped there. I flipped to our joint credit card account, my breath catching as I scrolled through the pages of transactions. Flights, hotels, high-end jewelry, designer clothing. The worst part? The receipts were all for 2 people. I felt a slow, creeping cold spread through my chest as realization dawned. He hadn't just stolen from me. He had stolen from our son. And he had run away with another woman. The betrayal burned, thick and suffocating in my throat. Aiden, still lounging on the couch, didn't look the least bit surprised. I gripped the edge of the table, willing myself to stay calm, to not lose it in front of my son. But my voice trembled as I spoke. He took everything. Aiden hummed in acknowledgement, tapping something on his tablet. The normalcy of the moment, the hum of the refrigerator, the quiet sound of Aiden's apple crunching, felt so completely wrong against the backdrop of what was happening. He really left us, I whispered, more to myself than to Aiden. I never thought he would actually. My voice broke. Aiden glanced up at me, his expression unreadable. You really didn't see it coming? The question was blunt. Too blunt. I snapped my head toward him, blinking. What? Aiden sighed, setting his apple core down on the coffee table before stretching his arms behind his head. Mom, he's been planning this for months. Maybe longer. I stiffened. What are you talking about? Aiden shrugged. You weren't paying attention. His words stung. I started to argue, but the fight fizzled out before it even began. Because deep down, I knew he was right. The signs had been there. Daniel had been working late more often. He had started dressing a little too well for casual errands. His phone had become practically glued to his hand. And lately, he had been more distant. I had chalked it up to stress. Work pressure. The normal ebb and flow of a marriage. But in reality, Daniel had been slowly, methodically disappearing. I felt sick. Aiden watched me carefully, his gaze far too steady for a boy his age. I could have told you months ago. I forced myself to take a breath. You knew. Aiden tilted his head, as if considering. Not exactly. I just paid attention. Paid attention. I let out a humorless laugh. And I didn't. Aiden didn't say anything. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to process everything. The money was gone. Daniel was gone. And somehow Aiden had known before I did. I glanced at him again, my quiet, observant son. He had always been too smart for his age. Too perceptive. Now, for the first time, I wondered how much he really knew. I exhaled sharply, pulling myself back to the disaster at hand. I need to cancel the cards. Aiden's lips twitched, as if he found something amusing. You don't have to. I frowned. What do you mean? He shrugged again, reaching for his tablet. I already did it. I blinked. You, what? He tapped a few keys and turned the screen toward me. My heart skipped a beat. On the display was a list of canceled transactions. All of them. I snatched the tablet from his hands, scrolling frantically. Aiden had shut down the credit cards, frozen all automatic transfers, and even placed fraud alerts on the accounts. It was all handled. Aiden. My voice was barely a whisper. How did you? I told you, Mom. His expression remained eerily calm. I fixed it. I stared at him, my mind a tangled mess of relief, shock, and something dangerously close to fear. Aiden had done what I should have done the moment I saw the missing money. I had frozen. Panicked. But my 11-year-old son? He had taken action. I wasn't sure if I should feel proud or terrified. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the ticking of the clock. Then Aiden leaned back into the couch, stretching lazily. "He's going to call you soon," he said, completely confident. I frowned. "Daniel?" Aiden nodded. "Yeah. He's going to freak out when he realizes what happened." I opened my mouth to ask what exactly he meant by that, but before I could speak, my phone buzzed. I froze, my breath catching in my throat as I stared at the screen. "Daniel." Aiden's lips curled into a slow smile. "Right on time," he murmured. I looked at my son, then back at the phone, my pulse hammering. Aiden had predicted this. I felt an uneasy shiver crawl down my spine. I didn't know what he had done yet, but I was about to find out. And somehow I already knew. It was going to be far worse than I expected. The phone vibrated again in my hand. "Daniel." I should have let it ring. Should have sent it to voicemail and let him stew in whatever mess he had walked into. But I answered. I wanted to hear him panic. I pressed the phone to my ear. "Daniel." "Sophia," he gasped. His voice was frantic, shaking, nothing like the smug man who had walked out on his family. "You have to help me. Something is very wrong." I crossed my arms, my chest tightening with a mix of fury and cold satisfaction. "Oh!" "You don't say. You don't understand," he babbled. "All my accounts, my cards, everything is frozen. I tried to pay for dinner, and my card got declined. I checked online, and all my money is just," he sucked in a breath, "gone." I barely held back a laugh. "Gone. Just like the money he stole from our son." I kept my voice even. "Sounds like karma." "This isn't funny, Sophia," he snapped. "I don't know what's happening, but I need you to." His voice cut off. I frowned. "Daniel?" There was a long silence. Then, his voice returned, lower, shaken. "Aiden." A shiver ran down my spine. I turned my head slowly. Aiden was watching me from the couch, completely at ease, twirling his tablet in his hands. He raised an eyebrow when I met his gaze. "What about Aiden?" I asked carefully. Daniel's breathing was harsh. I think it was him." I nearly dropped the phone. "Excuse me? This isn't normal, Sophia." Daniel hissed. "I can't access anything. Someone hacked into my accounts, reversed transactions, shut down my credit cards. This is serious. And it's too perfect. It's too clean. Who else could have done this?" My mouth went dry. I turned to Aiden, who hadn't moved. He wasn't denying it. He wasn't even trying to hide his amusement. And that scared me more than anything. I swallowed hard. "Daniel, you think our 11-year-old son did this?" Another silence. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, Daniel said, "I don't think." "I know." My grip tightened around the phone. I felt like I was standing at the edge of something vast and terrifying. "Daniel," I said, forcing my voice to remain calm. "Take a breath and explain to me exactly what happened." A loud thud came through the phone, like he had just slammed something onto a table. "This morning, I tried to book another flight. The payment wouldn't go through. When I checked, my bank balance was almost zero. Then I looked at my credit cards, all canceled. Every single one." I inhaled sharply. "I went to the bank," Daniel continued. "They said someone reported fraudulent activity linked to my accounts. They shut everything down." I clenched my jaw. If that was true, then Aiden hadn't just cut Daniel off, he had made sure the banks wouldn't let him access anything ever again. I turned back to my son. He was still watching me, but his expression had changed. He wasn't just amused anymore. He looked proud. Like he had won a game I hadn't even realized we were playing. "Sophia," Daniel said, voice urgent. "This wasn't random. It was deliberate. Someone went in, erased transactions, redirected money, and triggered security locks. And you know as well as I do." He hesitated, voice dropping to almost nothing. "Aiden is the only one smart enough to pull something like that off." I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. I had always known Aiden was different. He had taught himself how to code when he was 6. He built his own computer at 8. He cracked our Wi-Fi password for fun when he was 9. His teachers had told me repeatedly that he was operating at a level far beyond his peers. But this was something else entirely. I forced myself to speak. You think Aiden stole your money? Not stole, Daniel said bitterly. Took it back. I could barely breathe. Aiden met my gaze, unblinking. He held up his tablet and tapped the screen twice. A notification popped up on my phone. Bank transaction complete. Funds have been restored. I inhaled sharply. My name. My account. The money was back. I looked at Aiden, my heart slamming against my ribs. I couldn't even form the words. You reversed everything? His lips curled slightly. I told you, Mom. He stretched his arms behind his head, completely at ease. I fixed it. I turned away, pressing the phone harder against my ear. Daniel, the money is back. He exhaled, long and shaky. Of course it is. We were both silent for a long time. Then Daniel whispered, He's not normal, Sophia. Aiden stiffened at that. My fingers tightened around the phone. He's our son. That's what scares me, Daniel admitted. He's 11. 11. He shouldn't be able to do this. And the way he did it, he broke off. You think this is a win, don't you? I said nothing. Daniel let out a bitter laugh. You don't see it yet. But you will. The line went dead. I lowered the phone slowly. My hands were shaking. Aiden didn't say a word. I turned back to him, my pulse roaring in my ears. Tell me the truth, I said softly. How did you do it? Aiden tilted his head slightly, as if considering whether or not to answer. Then, slowly, he reached for his tablet and unlocked it. The screen filled with lines of code, digital footprints, and records of every action he had taken. I watched Dad for months, he said. I saw where he kept his passwords, where he moved money, how he spent it. He was sloppy. So I made sure he wouldn't get away with it. A chill crept down my spine. You didn't just take back what was ours, I whispered. You destroyed him. Aiden didn't flinch. He deserved it. I swallowed hard. My 11-year-old son had just executed a perfect digital takedown of his own father, and he didn't feel an ounce of guilt about it. I wanted to tell myself he did this out of love, for me, for his future. But the way he sat there, perfectly still, completely calm, I wasn't so sure anymore. The moment Daniel hung up, I stood frozen, staring at my phone like it might explode in my hand. My mind was racing. He knew. Daniel knew Aiden had done it. And the worst part? Aiden didn't even seem to care. I turned slowly to face him, expecting guilt, maybe nervousness, something. But no. My son just sat there, legs crossed on the couch, his tablet resting against his knee. Calm. Unbothered. Like we had just discussed the weather. He met my gaze, his expression unreadable. Are you mad? The question caught me off guard. Was I? Was I angry that he had taken back what Daniel stole? No. Was I terrified that he had done it so effortlessly, so coldly, like he was flipping a switch? Absolutely. I forced myself to swallow. Aiden, do you have any idea what you just did? He blinked, looking almost bored. Yeah. I exhaled shakily, pressing a hand to my temple. You didn't just get the money back. I gestured helplessly at his tablet. You crippled him, Aiden. He has nothing left. No access to anything. Aiden didn't even blink. I know. I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. That doesn't bother you? Aiden tilted his head slightly, considering. No. A heavy silence stretched between us. My stomach twisted. I had spent 11 years raising this child, and in this moment, staring at his perfectly still expression, I realized. I didn't know him. Not really. Aiden, I said carefully. You don't think this was too much? He gave me a small, amused smile. Was it too much when he took my college fund and left us? I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Because he wasn't wrong. Daniel had abandoned us. He had stolen from his own son. And Aiden had outplayed him. But still, this wasn't normal. I licked my lips, forcing my voice to stay steady. Okay, let's talk about this rationally. I am being rational. I flinched at how calm his voice was. I swallowed hard. Aiden, hacking bank accounts? Manipulating transactions? Freezing assets? That's not something an 11-year-old should be able to do. Aiden held my gaze, his face unreadable. That's what Dad thought too. A shiver ran down my spine. I glanced at his tablet, still open, still displaying a digital blueprint of Daniel's downfall. The sheer precision of it, the methodical planning, was chilling. And then my phone buzzed again. I jumped. Aiden didn't move. I grabbed it, expecting another call from Daniel. But it wasn't. It was a notification from my email. New alert. Fraud investigation opened. My pulse skipped. I clicked it, my eyes scanning the message. Daniel's name was plastered everywhere. His accounts. His transaction history. A pending investigation from his bank. I slowly lowered the phone. Aiden. My voice barely came out. What did you do? Aiden leaned back on the couch, stretching his arms. I told you. His eyes glittered with something unreadable. I fixed everything. My stomach flipped. I had assumed, wrongly, that he had just taken the money back. But Aiden had gone further. Much, much further. You reported him. My voice was barely a whisper. Aiden didn't even blink. Of course I did. My breathing hitched. But he continued, tapping his tablet. I didn't just report the stolen money. A sinking feeling gripped me. I gripped the edge of the couch. Aiden, what else did you do? He smiled. A slow, calculated smile. I gave them everything, Mom. The room tilted. I swallowed. What does that mean? Aiden sat up straighter, his voice brimming with quiet confidence. Dad wasn't just spending our money. He was moving it around. My head snapped up. What? Aiden nodded. He had offshore accounts. I choked on air. You found those? Yep. Aiden pulled up another file on his tablet. And I sent everything to the authorities. I gripped the edge of the couch, dizzy with disbelief. Oh my God. He wasn't just cutting Daniel off. He was destroying him. Before I could even process that, my phone rang again. This time, Daniel's number flashed across the screen. Aiden watched me. Slowly, deliberately, he nodded. Put it on speaker. I hesitated. I didn't want to. But something in Aiden's face, a quiet certainty, an eerie calm, made me do it. I pressed speaker. And the moment I did, Daniel's voice exploded through the phone. What did he do? I flinched. Aiden just smiled. Daniel, I said carefully. Calm down. Calm down. He was breathing hard. The bank froze everything. My accounts, my cards, even my business account. I pressed a hand to my temple. Business account? Daniel let out a bitter laugh. Oh, don't play dumb, Sophia. Your little hacker son didn't just take back the college fund. He dug into everything. My investments, my offshore accounts, he flagged them all. I shot Aiden a look. He just watched me. Still calm. Daniel kept going. Do you have any idea what you've done? They think I'm laundering money. Aiden tilted his head. Aren't you? I froze. Daniel went completely silent. My stomach twisted. What did you just say? Daniel finally asked, his voice dangerously low. Aiden leaned forward slightly, his face calm, collected, too controlled for an 11-year-old. You were moving money around. You thought nobody would notice. He shrugged. But I did. Another silence. Then a slow, unhinged laugh. Oh my God, Daniel said breathlessly. You little. He cut himself off. I could hear him breathing, heavy and dangerous. Aiden just stared at the phone, waiting. Then Daniel's voice came back lower. You think you're clever, don't you? Aiden didn't respond. You think this is over? Daniel continued. Another beat of silence. Then, in a voice so cold it sent a shiver down my spine, Aiden finally spoke. I know it's over. Daniel let out a bitter, furious laugh. You don't know who you're messing with, kid. Aiden smiled. That's funny. I swallowed, my throat dry. Daniel sucked in a breath. You better watch your back. My stomach plummeted. But before I could say anything, Aiden reached forward and ended the call. The silence after was heavy. Then Aiden turned to me, that same eerie calm still in his eyes. You should block his number, he said simply. He won't be calling again. I stared at him, stunned, shaken. And for the first time since all of this started, I realized Daniel wasn't the only one I needed to be afraid of. The call had ended. The silence that followed was suffocating. Aiden sat on the couch, his hands resting on his tablet like none of this fazed him. Like he hadn't just obliterated his own father's financial existence. Like he hadn't just provoked a man with nothing left to lose. I stood there, staring at my phone, Daniel's final words ringing in my ears. You better watch your back. Aiden's voice broke through my thoughts. You should delete his number. I turned to him slowly. He was watching me, his expression calm. Too calm. My voice caught. Aiden, what have you done? He blinked at me. I told you. His fingers tapped against the side of his tablet. I fixed everything. I let out a breath, shaking my head. No, Aiden. You didn't just fix things. You erased him. Aiden didn't respond. I ran a hand through my hair, my heart pounding. You took back the money. You froze his accounts. You turned him in for fraud. Aiden, do you even understand what you've done? He shrugged. Yeah. I stared at him. He wasn't sorry. Not even a little bit. Aiden. My voice came out sharper than I intended. Your dad isn't just mad. He's desperate. And desperate people are dangerous. Aiden just watched me. Then, in a voice too steady, he said, I know. I exhaled shakily. Then why did you push him even further? Aiden's lips curled slightly. Because he deserved it. I felt my knees go weak. I sat down across from him, pressing my hands against my temples. Aiden, normal kids don't do this. Aiden leaned forward slightly. Normal kids don't have their dads steal from them. I looked up at him. His face was blank. But his eyes were sharp. Cold. Calculated. I swallowed hard. Aiden, how did you even do this? He tilted his head slightly, as if considering whether or not to tell me. Then, after a long pause, he unlocked his tablet and turned the screen toward me. The moment I saw what was on it, my breath caught. It wasn't just bank transactions. It was everything. Spreadsheets of Daniel's financial movements, flagged transactions, copies of messages and emails. A full digital footprint. I forced myself to speak. How long have you been tracking him? Aiden was silent for a moment. Then, in that same calm voice, he said, a while. I stared at him. A while. My voice was barely a whisper. How long, Aiden? He tapped his fingers against the tablet. Since the first time he moved money out of our account. A chill crept down my spine. That was months ago. Aiden nodded. Yeah. My stomach twisted. You knew. Aiden met my gaze, unblinking. Of course I knew. I gripped the edge of the table, my pulse hammering. He had known. For months. And he hadn't said a word. My mouth felt dry. Why didn't you tell me? Aiden's expression didn't change. You wouldn't have done anything. The words hit like a slap. I sucked in a breath. That's not true. Aiden just watched me. And in that moment, I realized he believed it. He thought I wouldn't have stopped Daniel. That I would have let him get away with it. And worse, he might have been right. I had ignored the signs. I had told myself Daniel wouldn't do something like this. Meanwhile, Aiden had been watching everything. Calculating. Waiting. Planning. My voice was barely above a whisper. What else did you do? Aiden exhaled slowly, as if he had been waiting for me to ask that. Then, without hesitation, he flipped to another screen. My stomach dropped. I leaned forward, my eyes scanning the screen, my pulse skipping violently. It wasn't just financial data. There were emails. Messages between Daniel and his girlfriend. Encrypted files. Phone records. And at the bottom, a report he had sent to the authorities. My blood ran cold. You didn't just take his money, I whispered. You built a case against him. Aiden nodded once. I swallowed hard. Aiden, this could ruin him. His face was unreadable. Good. A shiver ran down my spine. I leaned back, gripping the armrest of the couch, trying to steady myself. I had been so focused on Daniel's betrayal that I hadn't even stopped to question how, exactly, Aiden had handled it. But now, looking at this, looking at my son, who had systematically dismantled his father's life with chilling precision, I wasn't sure which of them scared me more. I pressed my fingers against my temples. Aiden, what happens now? Aiden tilted his head slightly. Nothing. I looked at him sharply. Nothing. He nodded. The authorities have everything they need. Dad's broke. His girlfriend won't stick around now that he has no money. He's finished. He said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I let out a shaky breath. Aiden, you're 11. He raised an eyebrow. And? I rubbed my hands down my face. And, this isn't normal. Aiden was silent for a moment. Then, in a voice softer than before, he said, would it have been normal if I let him get away with it? I froze. Because I didn't have an answer. Would it have been normal to let Daniel walk away? To pretend like none of this happened? To just accept it? Aiden watched me carefully. I didn't do anything wrong. I exhaled slowly. That's not the point. Aiden's lips twitched slightly. Isn't it? I hesitated. Because the truth was, I wasn't sure anymore. I had been so focused on stopping Daniel that I hadn't considered what came after. And now, looking at Aiden, I realized I might have created something much scarier. My son hadn't just stopped a thief. He had orchestrated a takedown. A complete, ruthless, calculated takedown. And he had done it without hesitation. I inhaled deeply. Aiden, what if he fights back? Aiden's expression didn't change. He won't. I frowned. How do you know that? Aiden's lips curled. Because he's not as smart as me. The words sent a chill down my spine. I swallowed hard. Aiden, are you even scared of him? He tilted his head slightly. No. I felt my heart skip. Not even a little bit? Not after what Daniel had just said? Not after his threats? I let out a slow breath. What happens if he comes back? Aiden's fingers tapped against the side of his tablet. Then, after a long pause, he said, then I'll have to fix that too. And for the first time, I wondered if I should be more afraid of Daniel or my own son. The days after Daniel's phone call were eerily quiet. Too quiet. Aiden went about his routine like nothing had changed. He did his homework, played with his tablet, and even asked me what we were having for dinner as if he hadn't just systematically dismantled his father's life. Me? I could barely breathe. Daniel's words haunted me. You better watch your back. I blocked his number, deleted his contact, reported the threats to the police. But I knew Daniel. He wasn't the type to disappear quietly. And he had nothing left to lose. The knock at the door. It happened late at night. I was in the kitchen, sipping on tea, trying to calm my nerves. Aiden was in the living room, flipping through his tablet like he always did when... Bang, bang, bang. I nearly dropped my mug. Aiden looked up, completely unfazed. I felt the air leave my lungs. I knew who it was. I turned to Aiden, whispering, "Go to your room." Aiden didn't move. "Aiden," I said again, my voice sharper. "Go." His fingers tapped against the tablet, his expression unreadable. "No." I gritted my teeth. Why was he like this? The banging came again, harder this time. I inhaled deeply, steeling myself, then walked to the door. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. I peeked through the peephole. Daniel. I sucked in a breath. He looked nothing like the man I used to know. His face was unshaven, his eyes bloodshot. His expensive clothes, always perfectly ironed, were wrinkled and stained. He looked desperate. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed, "Don't open it." But before I could step away, Aiden walked past me. Before I could react, he unlocked the door and swung it open. Face to face with a desperate man. Daniel froze. He hadn't been expecting that. His wild eyes darted down to Aiden, who stood in the doorway, arms crossed, completely calm. A slow, dangerous smile spread across Daniel's face. "Well," he said, his voice rough. "If it isn't my little genius." My stomach twisted. Aiden didn't flinch. "Hi, Dad." Daniel's smile faltered at his tone. He turned his gaze toward me. Sophia, you've been ignoring my calls. I stood there, frozen. He stepped inside. That's not very nice. I forced myself to stand tall. You need to leave. He let out a bitter laugh. Oh, I don't think so. His eyes flicked back to Aiden. Not until we have a little chat. Aiden didn't blink. About what? Daniel's nostrils flared. About what you did. He took a slow step forward. Aiden still didn't move. I shoved myself between them. Daniel, get out. He ignored me. His eyes burned into Aiden's. You think you're clever, don't you? Aiden tilted his head. Yes. Daniel's jaw clenched. You ruined me, he spat. You think you won? Aiden's lips curled slightly. Didn't I? I sucked in a sharp breath. Oh my God, Aiden. Daniel's hands fisted at his sides. His entire body trembled with barely contained rage. You, he growled, voice low and dangerous. You think this is over? Aiden didn't even blink. I know it is. Daniel lunged. The trap snaps shut. I reacted instantly, pushing Aiden back, raising my arms to shield him. But before Daniel could take another step, a loud beep echoed through the house. Daniel froze. Aiden? He smirked. What the hell is that? Daniel snapped. Aiden tapped his tablet. Evidence. I stared at my son. What? Daniel's face twisted in confusion. What? Aiden flipped his tablet around. The screen was streaming live security footage from a camera outside our house, recording Daniel. Right now, my breath caught. Daniel's entire body went rigid. Did you really think, Aiden said, voice light, that I wouldn't prepare for this? Daniel's face paled. You, his voice cracked. You set me up. Aiden shrugged. Obviously. I felt the world tilting beneath me. Aiden had known Daniel would come, and he had planned for it. You're bluffing, Daniel snapped. You wouldn't call the cops. Aiden raised an eyebrow. Wouldn't I? My heart stopped, because at that exact moment, sirens screamed from outside. Daniel's entire face drained of color. He spun toward the door too late. The flashing blue and red lights poured through the windows. Footsteps pounded against the pavement. Daniel let out a strangled breath. No, no, no. The front door burst open. Freeze. Hands up. I sucked in a breath. 2 officers stormed inside, guns drawn. Daniel's eyes widened in pure panic. His gaze snapped to Aiden. You little. Aha. Aiden wagged a finger. Careful. You're on camera. Daniel roared in frustration. The cops grabbed him, wrestled him to the ground, cuffed him. I just stood there, shaking, stunned. One of the officers turned to me. Ma'am, are you okay? I couldn't answer, because I wasn't sure. The aftermath. Daniel was gone, dragged out of the house, screaming. But I barely felt relief, because as I turned toward Aiden, I felt something else entirely. Something I didn't want to name. He stood there, completely calm, unshaken, like he had expected all of this, like he had planned every second of it. I swallowed hard. Aiden. He looked up at me. Yeah, Mom. I searched his face, my pulse unsteady. For the first time, I asked myself, did I raise a genius? Or did I raise something else entirely? I forced myself to speak. You knew he'd come. Aiden nodded. Of course. You knew he'd threaten us. Another nod. Obviously. I felt sick. I whispered, and you let it happen. Aiden gave me a small, knowing smile. Yeah, the realization. I backed up a step. Aiden watched me carefully. For the first time since this started, I saw something in his eyes. Something that made my stomach twist. Not anger. Not fear. Control. A deep, unsettling control. I inhaled sharply. Aiden, are you afraid of anything? His expression flickered. Then, softly, he said no. A shiver ran down my spine. Daniel was gone. But as I stared at my son, I realized, maybe the real danger hadn't left at all. Maybe it was standing right in front of me, watching, waiting, smiling. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. Just hours ago, Daniel had been standing in our living room, furious and desperate. Now, he was gone, hauled away in handcuffs, screaming threats that I knew were empty. But I didn't feel relieved. I didn't feel safe. Because the real problem was still here. Sitting across from me. Aiden. I watched him carefully, my heartbeat uneven. He was sitting on the couch, tapping on his tablet as if nothing had happened. As if he hadn't just orchestrated his father's downfall. As if he hadn't planned the entire thing. I took a deep breath. Aiden. He didn't look up. Yeah? I hesitated. We need to talk. He exhaled softly, almost like he had been expecting this. He set his tablet down and leaned back, his expression unreadable. Okay. I swallowed. Why did you let him come here? Aiden raised an eyebrow. Because it was necessary. I frowned. Necessary? He tilted his head slightly, watching me with that same unnerving calm. Mom, if we had just ignored him, he wouldn't have stopped. He would have found another way to get to us. Another way to manipulate you. Another way to hurt us. I swallowed hard. And this was your solution? Aiden nodded. Yes. I shook my head, gripping the couch armrest. Aiden, normal kids don't do this. He shrugged. I'm not normal. My stomach twisted. That's not the point. Isn't it? He asked, his voice eerily quiet. Because if I were normal, we'd still be dealing with him. I exhaled shakily. You're 11. He smiled slightly. And? I forced myself to meet his gaze. And you shouldn't think like this. You shouldn't be planning things like this. He studied me for a long moment. Then, in a voice too soft, too deliberate, he asked, then who is supposed to stop him? You. The words hit like a slap. I inhaled sharply. Aiden. He leaned forward slightly, his gaze locked onto mine. Would you have stopped him, Mom? Would you have done anything? I opened my mouth. But no words came. Because deep down, I knew the truth. I had seen the signs. I had known Daniel was slipping away. I had ignored the red flags, made excuses, convinced myself it wasn't that bad. And Aiden? He hadn't ignored anything. He had seen it. And instead of waiting for me to fix it, he had fixed it himself. I pressed my fingers against my temples. Aiden. I don't know whether to be proud of you or terrified of you. A small smile tugged at his lips. Why can't it be both? A chill ran down my spine. He was serious. He had no regrets. No second thoughts. He had taken control of the situation and executed his plan perfectly. And now he was waiting for me to accept that. I swallowed hard. Aiden, what if the cops hadn't come in time? What if Daniel had hurt you? Aiden's expression didn't change. He wouldn't have. My chest tightened. You don't know that. He gave me a look that made my blood run cold. Yes, I do. I stared at him, the weight of his words settling deep in my bones. My son wasn't afraid of Daniel. He wasn't afraid of anything. And that terrified me. I took a shaky breath. Aiden, what happens next? He tilted his head slightly. Nothing. I frowned. Nothing. Aiden nodded. Daniel's gone. He won't be a problem anymore. We can move on. I blinked. Just like that? His lips curled slightly. Just like that. A lump formed in my throat. Aiden, people don't just move on from things like this. He studied me for a long moment. Then, in a voice so soft I almost missed it, he said, I do. I inhaled sharply. He meant it. He wasn't going to lose sleep over this. He wasn't going to feel guilt or doubt or regret. He had solved the problem. And now, in his mind, it was over. I felt my hands tremble. I forced myself to speak. Aiden, promise me something. He blinked. What? I swallowed hard. Promise me, you won't do something like this again. Aiden tilted his head, considering. I can't promise that. My breath caught. Aiden. He exhaled softly. I won't do anything unless I have to. That's not good enough. He studied me. Mom. I inhaled sharply. What? He leaned forward, his eyes steady, unshaken. If someone threatens us again, do you want me to do nothing? I froze. Because he had me cornered. He knew the answer. And I hated that I knew it too. I gripped the couch armrest tighter. Aiden, that's not the point. He smiled slightly. It kind of is. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My son, my 11-year-old son, was sitting here, calmly telling me that if it happened again, he wouldn't hesitate to act. That he would do whatever was necessary. No fear. No doubt. And that was what scared me the most. I swallowed hard. Aiden, do you even feel bad about any of this? He didn't answer right away. He sat back against the couch, his fingers drumming lightly against the armrest. Then, finally, he said no. My stomach dropped. I inhaled shakily. Aiden. I don't feel bad, he said, voice steady. Because I did what needed to be done. I stared at him, my pulse hammering in my ears. There was no remorse in his eyes. No uncertainty. Just cold, quiet confidence. Like he had figured out exactly how the world worked. Like he had accepted it. Like he had already decided that if he ever needed to fix something again, he would. No hesitation. No regret. I pressed my lips together, forcing myself to stay calm. I had thought Daniel was the danger. But maybe the real danger had been standing in front of me all along. Watching. Waiting. Smiling. I swallowed hard. Aiden. I need you to promise me something else. He raised an eyebrow. What? I forced myself to meet his gaze. Promise me, I whispered, that you won't become like him. His expression flickered. For the first time, his gaze dropped slightly. Then, after a long pause, he looked back up. I promise I won't be like him, he said softly. A wave of relief washed over me. Until he continued. I'll be better. I stopped breathing. Because I realized. Aiden didn't see himself as Daniel. He saw himself as something else entirely. Something smarter. Something stronger. Something far more dangerous. And I had no idea how to stop him. Or if I even could. Life after Daniel's arrest was eerily calm. Too calm. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, expecting the next disaster. The police had assured me that Daniel wouldn't be able to come near us again. His accounts were frozen, his fraudulent transactions were under investigation, and his girlfriend had already disappeared into the wind the moment the money dried up. Everything should have felt safe. But it didn't. Because the real threat had never been Daniel. It had been standing beside me the whole time. Aiden. My 11-year-old son. The boy who had planned everything. Who had executed a flawless takedown of his own father. Who had done it all without hesitation, without fear, without guilt. And the worst part? He was right. If it weren't for him, Daniel would have gotten away with everything. I should have been grateful. But I wasn't. I was terrified. The new normal. Aiden acted like nothing had changed. He still did his homework. Played with his tablet. Ate dinner with me every night. Like he hadn't just destroyed a grown man's life. Like he hadn't looked me in the eye and said, I don't feel bad. I watched him constantly now, looking for something. A sign that he regretted it. That he understood what he had done. But there was nothing. He was still my son. Still brilliant. Still kind, at least on the surface. But underneath? I didn't know anymore. And that terrified me. The drone. One afternoon, I found him in the garage. He had been spending more time in there lately, tinkering with something. I stepped inside, clearing my throat. What are you working on? Aiden didn't even look up. A drone. I frowned. You already built a drone. He adjusted a tiny wire. This one's better. Something about the way he said it sent a chill down my spine. I forced myself to keep my voice light. What's different about it? Aiden finally looked up at me. And for the first time in weeks, I saw it. That sharp glint in his eyes. The one that made my stomach twist. It can watch people, he said simply. Without them knowing. I froze. My throat went dry. Why would you need to do that? Aiden tilted his head. Because it's important to know what people are doing when they think no one is watching. A shiver crawled down my spine. Aiden, I said slowly. Who exactly are you trying to watch? His lips curled slightly. No one. I exhaled, forcing myself to relax. Maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe he was just experimenting. Maybe this was just a hobby. But then he added, yet. And my stomach dropped. The final conversation. That night, I sat across from him at the dinner table. I had to ask. I had to know. Aiden. He looked up, chewing his food. Yeah? I set my fork down carefully. If Daniel hadn't stolen from us, if he hadn't done any of this, would you still have done what you did? Aiden blinked. What do you mean? I swallowed hard. Would you still have investigated him? Tracked him? Planned everything? Aiden tilted his head slightly, considering. Then, finally, he shrugged. Probably. A lump formed in my throat. I felt my hands tremble under the table. Aiden met my gaze, calm, unwavering. Because it's always good to be prepared, he said simply. I inhaled sharply. Aiden, that's not normal. His lips curled slightly. Maybe normal is the problem. I pressed my fingers against my temples. Aiden, you're 11. You should be playing outside, worrying about school, making friends, not this. Aiden just watched me. Why? I frowned. What? Why should I be doing those things? I blinked. Because that's what kids do. He gave me a small, knowing smile. I'm not like other kids. And I had no idea how to argue with that. The warning. The night before Daniel's sentencing, my phone rang. I recognized the number immediately. Daniel's lawyer. I hesitated before answering. This is Sophia. The voice on the other end was deep, tired. Miss Carter, I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Carter. He wanted to pass along a message. I felt my chest tighten. I don't want to hear it. The lawyer sighed. I think you do. I swallowed. Fine. What is it? There was a pause. Then, you raised a son who doesn't just survive. He conquers. My breath hitched. But the lawyer wasn't finished. And one day, his heart might be too cold to save. I felt my entire body go still. Is that all? I whispered. The lawyer hesitated. That's all he said. I ended the call. The final thought. I stood there for a long time, gripping my phone. Aiden was in the living room, scrolling through his tablet. He looked up when he saw me. His expression was calm, unbothered, like he always was, like he always would be. I inhaled sharply. Maybe Daniel was right. Maybe Aiden was more dangerous than I ever realized. And maybe I wouldn't be able to stop him.